The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, Kshtigarbha holds a luminous pearl in one hand to light our way, and a staff in the other hand to smash open the gates of hell. Don't let beings out. On the altar we have these little gems, little polished rocks. Our Master Jisho used to use the analogy of the rock tumbler for a monastery. She said all she has to do is throw in finer and finer grit, and they just rub up against each other, and all that friction creates the polishing. So if you can imagine, every time you're upset about something, that's part of the cleaning friction. It's the friction that does the cleaning. So this is how we polish our minds. But you have to see that it's not the external thing that creates the suffering. It's up here that creates the suffering in the mind. Kshtigarbha is the Bodhisattva of great vows. I'm going to read you his vow. From now until the ends of the future, throughout uncountable eons, I will use skillful means to help beings in the 6 worlds who are suffering for their karmic offenses. Only when they have all been liberated will I myself become a Buddha. It's the opening of the mind of the Bodhisattva that is so fundamental to Buddhist practice. We have a society that cherishes material wealth and also comes with inadequacy, thinking that there's something wrong with us just because we're born. And so we try to fill that up with stuff. Money and houses and partners and animals, anything. And that, what we're learning in Buddhism is how to shift that, what's in it for me, to what can I give? How do we make offerings? How do we give up this suffering? Master Jisho said the real gift is letting go of the thing you never wanted anyway, which is your own suffering. We're the ones who cling to it. It's not going to just disappear until we let go of it. And it's a constant process of letting go of it. It's not just a one-time thing. How did he get to be a bodhisattva? There's a lovely book put out by the City of 10,000 Buddhas on the Sutra of the Past Vows of the Earth Store Bodhisattva, which is Kshtigarbha or Jisho. And it has a story there about a Brahmin woman who is one of the past lives of the Buddha, of the Bodhisattva, I mean. So I'm going to read you this story. At another time, inconceivable Aksamkaya eons ago, there was a Buddha named Enlightenment Flower, Samadhi, Self-Mastery King, Tathagata. That Buddha's lifespan was 400 billion Aksamkaya eons. That's a while. During his Dharma image age, there lived a Brahmin woman endowed with ample blessings from previous lives who was respected by everyone. Whether she was walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, God surrounded her and protected her. Her mother, however, embraced a deviant faith and often slighted the triple jewel. Her worthy daughter made use of many expedients in trying to convince her mother to hold right views, but her mother never totally believed. Before long, the mother's life ended, and her consciousness fell into the relentless hell. When that happened, the Brahma woman, knowing that her mother had not believed in cause and effect while alive, feared that her karma would eventually pull her into the evil paths. For that reason, she sold the family house and acquired many kinds of incense, flowers, and other gifts. With those she performed a great offering at that Buddha stupa and monasteries. She saw an especially fine image of the thus come one, enlightened flower samadhi self-mastery king, in one of the monasteries. I think that what it means by being in the Dharma image age is when they've got lots of pictures of the Buddha. So the Brahma woman beheld the honored countenance. She became doubly respectful by thinking to herself, Buddhas are called greatly enlightened ones who have gained all wisdom. If this Buddha were in the world, I could ask him where my mother went after she died. He would certainly know. The Brahma woman then wept for a long time as she gazed longingly upon the thus come one. Suddenly a voice in the air said, "O weeping worthy woman, do not be so sorrowful. I shall now show you where your mother has gone." The Brahman woman placed her palms together as she addressed space, saying, "Which virtuous deity has comforted me in my grief? From the day I lost my mother onwards, I have held her in memory day and night, but there is nowhere I can go to ask about the realm of her rebirth." The voice in the air spoke to the woman again. "I am the one you were beholding and worshipping, the former enlightenment flower samadhi self-mastery king, thus come one, or the Bodhisattva Tathagata. Because I have seen your regard for your mother is double that of ordinary beings, I have come to show you where she is." The Brahman woman suddenly lunged towards the voice that she was hearing, and then fell, injuring herself severely. Those around her supported and attended upon her, and after a long time she was revived. Then she addressed the air, saying, "I hope the Buddha will be compassionate and quickly tell me into what realm my mother has been reborn. I am now near death myself." The enlightenment flower samadhi self-mastery king, Tathagata, told us, the worthy woman, "After you make your offerings, return home quickly. Sit upright and concentrate on my name. You will soon know where your mother has been reborn." The Brahman woman bowed to the Buddha and returned home. The memory of her mother sustained her as she sat upright, recollecting enlightenment flower samadhi self-mastery king, Tathagata. After doing so for a day and a night, she suddenly saw herself beside a sea whose waters seethed and bubbled. Many evil beasts with iron bodies flew swiftly back and forth above the sea. She saw hundreds of thousands of men and women bobbing up and down in the sea, being fought over, seized and eaten by evil beasts. She saw yakshas with different shapes. Some had many heads, some many eyes, some many legs, some many heads. With their sharp fangs they drove the offenders onward towards the evil beasts. Or the yakshas themselves seized the offenders and twisted their heads and feet together into shapes so horrible that no one would dare even to look at them for long. During the time the Brahman woman was naturally without fear due to the power of recollecting the Buddha. A ghost king named Poisonless bowed his head in greeting and said to the worthy woman, "Welcome, O Bodhisattva. What conditions bring you here?" The Brahman woman asked the ghost king, "What is this place?" Poisonless replied, "We are on the western side of the great Iron Ring mountain, and this is the first of the seas that encircle it." The worthy woman said, "I've heard that the hells are within the Iron Ring. Is that actually so?" Poisonless answered, "Yes, the hells are here." The worthy woman asked, How have I now come to this place, to the place of the hells?" And Poisonless answered, "If it wasn't awesome spiritual strength that brought you here, then it was the power of karma. Those are the only two ways anyone comes here. That's interesting. The worthy woman asked, "Why is this water seething and bubbling? And why are there so many offenders and evil beasts?" Poisonless replied, "These are the beings of Jambudvipa," that's our world, "who did evil deeds. They have just died and passed away through 49 days without any surviving relative doing any meritorious deeds on their behalf to rescue them from this distress. Besides that, during their lives they themselves didn't plant any good causes. Now their own karma calls forth these hells." It's their own karma, the actions of their body, speech, and mind that cause these hells to arise. The first task is to cross this sea. 10,000 yojanas east of the sea is another sea, in which they will undergo twice as much suffering. East of that sea is yet another sea, where the sufferings are doubled still again. What the combined evil causes of the three karmic vehicles evoke is called the Sea of Karma. This is that place. The worthy woman asked Ghost King Poisonless, "Where are the hells?" Poisonless answered, "Within the three seas are hundreds of thousands of great hells, each one different. 18 of those are known as the great hells. 500 subsequent ones inflict limitless cruel sufferings. Following those are hundreds of thousands that inflict limitless further sufferings." The worthy woman again questioned the great king. "My mother died recently, and I do not know where she has gone." The ghost king asked the worthy woman, "When the Bodhisattva's mother was alive, what habits did she have?" That's a clue. The worthy woman replied, "My mother held deviant views and ridiculed and slandered the triple jewel, even if she occasionally believed she would soon become disrespectful again. She died recently, and I still do not know where she was reborn." Poisonless answered, "What was the Bodhisattva's mother's name and clan?" The worthy woman replied, "My parents were both Brahmins. My father's name was Shila Sudara Shana. My mother's name was Yu Di Li." Poisonous placed his palms together and implored the worthy woman, "Please, worthy one, quickly return home. There is no need for you to grieve further. The offender, Yi Du Li, was born in the heavens 3 days ago. It's said that she received the benefit of offerings made and blessings cultivated by her filial child who practiced giving to enlightenment flower samadhi self-mastery king, Tathagata, at stupas and monasteries. Not only was the Bodhisattva's mother released from the hells, but all the other offenders who were destined for the relentless hell received bliss and were reborn together with her." Having finished speaking, the ghost king put his palms together and withdrew. The Brahmin woman returned swiftly as if from a dream, understood what had happened, and then made a profound and far-reaching vow before the stupas and images of the enlightenment flower samadhi self-mastery king, Tathagata, saying, "I vow that until the end of future eons, I will respond to beings suffering for their offenses by using many expedient means to bring about their liberation." The Buddha told Manjushri, "The ghost king Poisonless is now the Bodhisattva foremost wealth, and the Brahma woman is now Kshtigarbha Bodhisattva." And it's this willingness to put the good of others ahead of our own good. She sold the house, used all of her wealth to make offerings, and was deeply committed to trying to help her mother. Not only did she help her mother, but she got all the beings out of hell. But I'm sure others have put themselves back. I want to read read a quote about vows, because vows are very, very important in our practice. The vows we make are the commitments that transcend birth and death. And it's one of the things that you take with you. Not only your habits, but your vows are very important. On the Shobogenzo, page 72, Dogen says, I pray that I and all sentient beings from this life throughout all future lives will ever be able to hear the true teachings. Once I've heard the true Dharma, I will not harbor doubts about it or fail to trust in it. Right at the time when I encounter the true Dharma, I will let go of the whole world and embrace the Buddha's teachings. Then, together with all sentient beings on the great earth, may we fulfill the way. If you make your vow in this manner, it will of itself become a cause for your enlightenment-seeking mind to arise. Never neglect the attitude of mind behind the vow. That attitude of mind is the thing the Diamond Sutra talks about as a little commentary here on karma. All actions produce effects. Intentional acts produce karmic effects. The Buddha taught that all volitional actions create seeds that are stored in the alaya consciousness. When these seeds germinate and grow, they produce a fruit of the same species. Compassionate acts produce karmic rewards, while cruel acts produce karmic retribution. What goes around comes around. The Buddha generally spoke about three basic kinds of karma. Karma generated by acts of body, by acts of speech, and by acts of mind. He often said that most people generate much of their bad karma through acts of speech. To understand karma, we must understand that it is caused by our intentions and nothing more. Let that sink in. When you speak or act or even think, the intention that you have is really important. So if your intention is a benign one, if your intention is to help, but if your intention is what's in it for me, this is not a very helpful intention. To understand karma, we must understand that it is caused by our intentions and nothing more. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha emphasizes generosity because acts of generosity are karmically the purest and most perfect of all acts. Prajna depends on both intellectual understanding and good intentions. So that's the result of good intentions and deep intellectual understanding comes great wisdom. And great wisdom is not separate from great compassion. The world that we see around us is the product of our karma. The Buddha says that all lakshanas are delusive. Lakshanas are the word most often used in the Diamond Sutra. It means characteristic or mark or, and most of the time in the Diamond Sutra it means delusive characteristics of self. Having lakshana of self, lakshana of human beings, lakshana of sentient beings, lakshana of a soul. The world we see around us is primarily the result of our clinging to a sense of self. The lakshana that we see are perceptible elements of our karma. The northern version of the Parinirvana Sutra says, the good and bad results of our actions follow us like a shadow. When this life is over, though we may regret what we have done, there is no way to come back and do it over again. But there is a vow we take that will help us transform those actions into something better. In the Diamond Sutra, just as by way of introduction, Subhuti is one of the Bodhisattva's disciples of the Buddha, and this is his question that caused the Buddha to write this scripture or speak this scripture. Rare one, world-honored one, the Tathagata protects and is concerned about all bodhisattvas, and he instructs all bodhisattvas. World-honored one, when good men and good women commit themselves to highest complete enlightenment, on what should they base themselves and how should they subdue their minds? I'm not so sure that subdue is actually the best word there. It's coming to grips with our minds in a way that allows us to be at peace. The Buddha is just delighted with this question. All great bodhisattvas should subdue their minds in the following manner. They should realize, as they vow to save all sentient beings, that in truth there are no sentient beings. Reverend Master Chushin had this wonderful poem about all is one as all is different. And all is one is the radiant Buddha mind that fills and contains all things. And all is different is everything exists in the world, because all the things in the world are really just manifestations of the Buddha's body. But they're all different. All is one is this radiant Buddha mind, and all is different is this radiant Buddha bodies that we see around us. No sentient beings to be saved, and they should realize that as they vow to save all the infinite, innumerable, illimitable sentient beings, that in reality there are no sentient beings to be saved. When they vow to lead them all to nirvana without reminder, be they born of eggs, wombs, moisture, or transformations, or whether they have form or no form, or whether they are able to perceive or do not perceive, or cannot perceive or will not perceive. They should realize that in truth there are no sentient beings to be led to nirvana. And why is this, Subhuti? If the bodhisattva has lakshana of self, this delusive idea of a self, this delusive idea of a human being, this delusive concept of a sentient being, or this delusive concept of a soul, then he's not a bodhisattva. And it's seeing all those things that create this inner friction is where you'll see delusion, your lakshana of self. All the angers, the fears, the frustrations, the greeds, the impatience, all of that stuff is lakshana of self. Some people are afraid of death. And after that description of the hells we just had, you may have some reason to be cautious. But there's the story of the Brahmin woman to remember, and there are bodhisattvas around. And all you have to do is call on them. Good intention. How do we create a good intention when we're upset about something? What is it that we have to do? We have to look at ourselves and actually recognize that's not a very good intention. There's greed there, there's fear there, there's anger. We have to recognize basically it's like a drug addiction. All these greeds and angers and fears. We have these habits of self. And we have to recognize that we have these habits. And it's only when we recognize them that we can then do something about them. And we can't see them through the eyes of judgment. We have to see them through the eyes of compassion. We have to recognize, oh, there's my old habit again. I'm frustrated with old so-and-so because he's done it again. The same thing I didn't like yesterday. And whether you didn't like what he did yesterday, today you're doing the same thing. You're getting upset about something, about somebody else, and you're thinking that your suffering is caused by something outside of yourself. And you have to keep turning that inward and saying, how did I create this suffering? Why am I upset with old so-and-so? He's probably doing the same thing that I always do. maybe a little bit worse, but sometimes not even as bad. In the scripture, I won't read the whole thing, but there's a wonderful section on generosity. And there are 6 different ways here that I wrote down about things we can practice to help with generosity. One is supporting and helping crippled, blind, retarded, or otherwise handicapped people, or giving money to the people helping the refugees. There are millions of refugees in this world. There's UNESCO helping all the children that are really having a difficult time. There's offering the images of Buddhas to monasteries and to the Sangha. There's restoring monasteries and rebuilding, republishing sutras, translating sutras. Medicine to help the sick and pregnant women. Good roots by training and practice to read the scriptures and put them into practice. And transferring that merit to others. So all that we do to create all the generosity that we give. And remember Bodhisattva's conversation with the Emperor of China, who he said he wanted to know what kind of merit he gained from giving all this money to building temples and supporting monks. And the Buddha said there isn't any merit in that. You wanted something back. That's a contract. So we have to learn to give without expectation of something in return. And if you create merit, give it away. That also creates merit. So you can't get rid of all of it. But do your best. Because as the Diamond Sutra said, generosity is a very pure offering. And whether that's material things or spiritual things, so the willingness to give it all away is what's really important. One of the nice chapters in this is about the division body of Kshtigarbha. There are billions and billions of beings who are now Kshtigarbha Bodhisattva because there are all these beings that he's gotten out of hell. And they all turn into bodhisattvas. And that bodhisattva mind is quite, infectious. And the more we give without any sense of self, the more we see how it is that we're freed from these delusive concept of a self. Because this generosity is generosity without wanting something back. And again, just examining our mind, and oh dear, I've done it again with the microphone. Thank you. I didn't break it. Still working. And I won't put the little thing in my water glass. Which I did last week or a couple of weeks ago. This is what you get when you have a weenie voice. You have to use a microphone. And there's joy in this practice, even when we make mistakes and do things that are not particularly skillful or helpful. The willingness to look at ourselves with joy and realize that if we can't laugh at ourselves, we'll never be able to laugh at anything else. And what we're really laughing at is these delusions of a self. Because when we realize that there's no self involved, it's just like being able to give a Dharma talk. You have to be prepared to make a fool out of yourself. And I'm well practiced in that. So evidently it's a good cure for people who are afraid of public speaking. Master Chi used to do that. She would go out, I'd take her to a TV station or something, and then she'd call me out on the stage as she was walking out and throw me questions. So you learn how to just be there and make a fool of yourself. It's very good practice for understanding lakshana of self. Because when we can see ourselves as in a not particularly serious way, then we can recognize these greeds and angers and fears and realize how unhelpful it is to act on them. And that joy that in the generosity comes through as the humility to look at ourselves and see that we're just like everybody else, and that there's nothing either special or less worthy than any of us. We're all in this boat together, and we're all on this raft to the other shore. And the more we help ourselves with our training, the more we help other people. The more we help others, the more we help ourselves. And this willingness to help, this offering that we make, this is our practice. And it comes out of the stillness of our meditation, and on the commitment to the keeping of the precepts. And these are the source of great joy. So may you all have great joy. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.